Did you get a chance to look at this?
Okay, cool. And what do you guys, just kind of general impressions of Sleight of Mouth, maybe what you've heard from before, maybe what your thoughts are just kind of coming into this? Valerie, start with you.
Well, I'm trying to sort this out. This compared to my experience mediating, where you're constantly reframing to try and take some of the heat out of the statement. I don't think it's the same thing as this, but that's my frame of reference for reframing in general.
Okay, how specifically would somebody might do that?
I think of it as like throwing neutralizing solution on words to try and neutralize them a little bit. So a good example would be if someone is employing a distortion and a generalization, like an NLP distortion generalization, like you can't trust Dutch people. You just can't, which I had someone say to me once in a mediation center in a session. In that moment, in the context of mediation, you don't want to chunk down. Like, you don't want to dig into that and find out why, but you want to try to neutralize it and move on. And so it's kind of like, oh, it sounds like you may have had a lot of bad experiences with Dutch people. And you have to say it with a straight face. So it's kind of like reframing. I guess maybe that's a little bit of a mind read, but I don't know if that's a good example. Anyway.
Okay.
That's just what I have that's just the reference, the frame of reference that I have is
you can't trust Dutch people. Okay.
Gotta be careful.
I don't know if I want to go that mediator, but okay. Jude, your thoughts on Sleight of Mouth and maybe experience?
So this is the first time I've heard of this, so this is kind of new to me.
Awesome. You're going to like it. Barb and Steven?
Go ahead. To me, it was it kind of like what Valerie was saying. It was reframing, but some of the examples I thought were very creative, and so I felt like, okay, this is reframing in a very creative way, and so I'm really intrigued to learn more because I could see where this would be beneficial on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, you run circles around people without them knowing. Right.
Well, and then just so many people are, and I'm not excluding myself from this, but can be very negative. And so it's nice to be able to have a way to, like Valerie was saying, visualize people's statements and maybe even help them see that what they're saying is not true.
Okay.
Because they generalize or they're distorted or they're deleting. So, yeah.
When I read through this earlier, I really liked it. And one of the things that I liked about it was that it was taking a bunch of things that we've learned and have practiced, the Metamodel and reframing and language play, and kind of combining it all together. And my reference point for thinking about it is more like the teaching and the training that I did in the Air Force. But I thought that Valerie's example was interesting. For example, I don't know much about mediating in the sense I think that she would use it. But I thought about that statement in more of a teaching perspective, even if it's not a teaching situation. And for example, I might have responded to that person with something like, yes, I understand, I've lived in other countries and I know that different cultures can take things in different ways. So I can see why you might interpret what they say differently or something like that, right?
That's a great sleight of mouth pattern. We'll go in exactly what he just did there. So you guys can keep doing that over and over again. Go ahead and continue.
Well, I think that's it. I mean, but it's, I just thinking about it, I know that I've done a lot of it because I realized through the years that if you confront somebody with something, kind of like saying, I love you, but, kind of thing, it can negate anything that, any rapport you've built up, or, it can focus them on the past of their, that interaction, as opposed to keeping them looking forward and trying to find areas of agreement, more like the Milton model, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I know that it's a really useful thing, and I see that I've done it in a lot of scenarios. So I'm definitely interested in learning more.
Cool. So briefly, the sleight of mouth is just processes by which beliefs can be established, shifted, transformed through language patterns. So essentially, I have this belief, I communicated it to you through words, and now you have the ability to go ahead and take that belief, shift it, move it, establish it further, or transform it through your language. So there's many options. This belief's right there in front of you, and you can go ahead and you can work through it and change it there. Consider them to be verbal reframes that have a profound shift on somebody's map of the world. So as we saw a while back, is language is a representational system. Just as the kinesthetic system is a system, just as the auditory system is a system, just as the visual system is a system, our linguistics are a system as well. They're all subject to the distortions, deletions, and generalizations, and they all have movement within them. Why this is important is because they can all be shifted and changed and transformed. So one person's interpretation of a word or a sentence is different from another person's interpretation of a visual cue, and different from another person's interpretation of an auditory cue. And so it's all similar in our experience, our understanding of the world in that way. And so while there is imperfectness with the way that we're interpreting the world, therein lies also our opportunity. So what it has the benefit of really giving us the capabilities of doing, it's transformational in our ability to persuade somebody. It provides us a tool for conversational belief change, where we don't have to go in and do a swish pattern with them. We don't have to go in and do a parts integration with them, because we can just talk to them and have them see a belief in a new way, and either maybe reaffirm a belief, have a new belief, or take down a different path through maybe uncovering another belief or shifting something else along the way. We'll see more on that a little bit later when we go through belief chains.
So Sean, is it a tool? Is it a tool for reframing?
Well, reframing you could consider a part of the sleight of mouth. Essentially, I wouldn't necessarily do that. But I mean, loosely put, you could just say reframing is a sleight of mouth pattern. So essentially, when I reframe something, when I say that this is something different, or when I communicate that through my words, it has the ability to change somebody's beliefs. So absolutely, it could be put under that. Yeah, we got one more joining us here.
Becky!
That makes me seasick.
You look confused. Smile.
Well, my computer won't get on. It's making me mad.
Turn it sideways for us.
Okay. All right. And I'm going to get my headset here real quick.
Yeah, much better.
Sorry, I'm late. I don't know. I get internet now. My computer won't access anything. It's retarded. Okay. Can you guys see okay?
Yeah, that's good. And so,
there we go. Okay? Okay, good.
Good. And one of the main focuses that I've turned my attention to is more towards doing this kind of talk therapy, because it's less and less where you'll have somebody in front of you and you can go ahead and collapse anchors in front of them. It's less and less the case where you have somebody that you can reach out, you can touch, you can move and do all those things.
Mm-hmm.
While those things are all useful, they're becoming less and less useful compared to sleight of mouth patterns. So let's read through some of these examples. Does everybody have the handout at least near them? If not, I can go ahead and post them on the screen. Good, Stephen, if you'd do that first example for us.
I like this one. Coach, I'm covered in sweat. That's not sweat, that's satisfaction.
Awesome one, right? Because what's say it's like basketball and they're like in a game or something and the focus of the child is playing the basketball game. No, he's focused on actually being covered in sweat. And so it's more the case where there's a problem. He's like, I'm covered in sweat, covered in sweat. What's he probably want? Maybe a towel, maybe to not be covered in sweat. Maybe what's more important? If I'm the coach, I probably want him to get back in the game and win the game or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe feel good about himself.
Yeah, I interpreted that the same way, that I'm covered in sweat is somehow negative to that guy. And the coach just reframes it and says, that's not sweat, that's hard work, or that's accomplishment, or that's satisfaction, or something like that.
Yeah.
And you know, might ideally make him want to go out and get more sweaty and win the game for him or something.
Mm-hmm.
What also is this? When we look at maybe pacing and leading somebody, what am I doing here that might be generally negative towards an NLP? You guys know?
Being the coach,
But
and
you're leading up to an outcome.
Which is good, right?
Mm-hmm.
What
Satisfaction.
might be problematic in this wording? So, coach, I'm covered in sweat, and I say that's not sweat, it's satisfaction.
You're arguing with them a little bit. There's something combative about that, and if there's not rapport, it could be ineffective.
Exactly. So I'm breaking rapport with this, which isn't a problem if I have a lot of rapport established with this person and they already trust my lead. So if I'm a coach, this makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
However, if I'm in a relationship, maybe not. Or maybe just dating. Maybe that's a better example. If we just met and she says that she's covered in sweat, I tell her that's not sweat, it's satisfaction. Well, not gonna be a good thing, right?
You can say,
Idiot.
yeah, but that's a good point about that. That's the one thing that stood out to me is the not part, you know, kind of that confrontational part, like I mentioned earlier. You could say, yeah, you know, if it's like the scenario you just said, Sean, you just started dating this woman, she says, oh, I'm all sweaty. And you can say, yeah, but I know that sweat to me just means that you're, you know, something positive, working hard, or
that you're glowing.
Yeah.
That seems a bit transparent to me, but
but I've used that one with girlfriends when out hiking or something, like, oh my God, I'm just so sweaty. And I'm like, you're not sweating, you're just glowing. You're having such a good time. And they're like, oh, shut up.
Exactly.
It doesn't really work.
Not hiking with Barb.
Come on, you want to glow?
And so what we'll notice about these sleight of mouth patterns is they're different. They're not our Metamodel programs. They're not our Milton model hypnotic language. They're subtly different. And we'll start to see kind of the different essences of them. I really admire Dilts for putting these together. There's, at least he says, about 12 patterns. And we'll look at some of those and exactly what happens in those. Let's look at the next quote there. Valerie, if you want to take that one for us.
I just can't do it. Good. That's one less thing you have to worry about. So this one, I like the redirect, the agreement, and then redirect on it.
What do you think the next response probably is going to be from this?
What?
Maybe that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What else? What would an even better response? If I knew I was a good communicator by saying these words, and then I got an even better response, what do you think the better response would be?
I think that better response would be that person would just be like, oh, well, now I'm just going to prove to you that I can do it.
Yeah, exactly. We would want a polarizing response.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, oh, now I'm actually fighting to go and do this. Where before we had this victim mentality, I'm pathetic, I can't do it, there's no hope. Now we have, okay, I'm fighting, yes, I can do this.
So would it be, sorry, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Would it, if they had said, if like, I just can't do it, if the response had been, good, I didn't think you could do it, would that be the same sort of thing to get a polarizing response?
It could be, depending on the person's frame of the world. So, is it really that they don't believe they can do it, or is it that they want attention? Because if we say, good, I didn't think you could, well, then attention's gone. Conversation's over. Then they might try to fight for more attention. But say they do think that they can do it, and they say, I just can't do it. And then you say, I didn't think you could. Then they might fight you as well and say, I can't do it. I just wanted sympathy. I just wanted support. I just want to know that I can, you have my back when we're going towards this. And obviously I don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of funny in essence, because the example that I just gave is they're kind of baiting you to show you that, or to get you to show them that you're going to support them. And when you show them that you're not really going to support them in that way or encourage that kind of behavior, then it diffuses that action for them. Because they were a little bit manipulative in that doing this behavior, I can't do it, saying those words to get you to be supportive. When instead they could have said, I just need you to support me in this. Oh, okay, I can support you. I know that you can do this. That might be a facetious remark that I make. Yep, I didn't think you could. Jude, our next one.
If I care about others, they will take advantage of me. It's not that you are caring about others, but you are forgetting to take care of yourself.
That's a pretty clever one. And notice how that one's a little bit similar to the sweat one, where we're changing the meaning and the implications there. Next one, Barb.
You were late, so you don't care about me. At 1 minute of not being late, they're on. Hold on.
Being there on time.
Oh, sorry. At 1 minute of not being there on time, then I don't care about you.
How do we feel about that one?
It's awkward.
Yeah, there's just something about it that doesn't.
Well, I like the concept, but yeah, I agree. It's not the best way to.
Well, that's going to take chunking down to. It's going to start a whole conversation.
Right.
Well, and that's essentially what we did here. So at essentially 1 minute of being late, you know that I don't care about you. That might be better said in that way.
Yeah, that's actually, I like that better.
Can you say that again?
At exactly 1 minute that I'm late, you know that I don't care about you? Or is it 30 seconds?
Okay.
That's really the kind of message that you're going after there.
Right, because to me, Sean, stating it that way, it points out, to me anyway, it points out the absurdity of the statement, you were late so you don't care about me. Well, that's just absurd.
Exactly.
By saying, so 1 minute late, I don't care about you? Or was it 30 seconds? Is it a minute and a half? Kind of does point out the absurdity of it.
And if the absurdity isn't there, that's why you take it even further. Okay, so at exactly 5 minutes and 33 seconds, I'm late, then you know that I don't care about you. Okay, I'll make sure that I'm there at 5 minutes and 30 minutes late every time.
Oh.
Next one for you, Mom.
Okay. I can't drive this car because I've never done it before. Just because you haven't does it mean you can't? No.
One response, right? And so if we look at that one, we also see necessity. So one of our Milton model patterns is, what exactly is it? But essentially it's the modal operators of necessity. That's what it is. So I've never done it before, and that's an implication about something. I've never done it means that I can't do it. It's necessary for me to have done it before for me to be able to do it, which is just pointing at a limiting belief. So we can go ahead and take it apart. We can bust it up with the Milton model, and we can say, so it's necessary for you to do it one time to know that you can do it. That might be a specific Milton model pattern that we do on it, or I'm sorry, Metamodel. But this way, we already kind of know the framework, so we can just bust it with a Dilts pattern instead. What's another one that we could respond to this that might be even better?
I thought of a response that was more like, at one point, you had never driven this car before.
Mm-hmm. Right,
And you can
because
obviously,
before you drive it, you've never driven it. So it's kind of a weird
yeah,
cycle there.
exactly.
I worked with this a few months ago with a guy that never had really done coaching. And so I asked him, I was like, well, when does a person know that they can do coaching? Or when does a person know that they can do NLP, they can teach somebody, or they can guide somebody through a session? You know, at what point is it, and what's the difference structurally if we're looking at neurolinguistic programming? Because this guy knew NLP. What's the difference? Because when somebody cures somebody of smoking the first time, and when he cures somebody of smoking the 100th time, maybe there's a higher level of competency, but what's the difference between the two and him being able to know that he can do those two things? One can make the argument that it's a bunch of reference experiences, but then the guy who does it the first time, if he has the belief and he does it, well, that's really all that's necessary then. That makes sense. I see people thinking over there. So yeah,
well, I'm just thinking that ties into, it kind of ties also into what is their convincer strategy.
Yeah.
Do I do it once, or do I need to do it 1,000 times? Yeah.
Absolutely. Taking it back to our meta programs. The next one, this house is too expensive. And so I might say, what if it was too cheap? What if it wasn't too expensive? What if it was just too cheap?
Yeah, I didn't quite get why that response was framed that way. That doesn't, what was the purpose of phrasing it that way?
I think even better phrased, it would be maybe, what if you're just too cheap? Or you could say, it's not that the house is too expensive, it's that you're too cheap, which might bring some kind of confrontation. Or you could say, it's not that the house is too expensive, it's that you're acting too cheap. And that'll bring a little bit less resistance. And I'll show you why here in a little bit.
Well, the way I read it was comparing it to being maybe a luxury good to something that's inexpensive, and your thought process is, well, why is it too cheap? Why is it so inexpensive? It could be the same thing, but it's not expensive, it's cheap. And what is the problem with it if it's too cheap? Underpriced, undervalued.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and the way I read it, by saying what would happen if somebody says, this house is too expensive, and said, what would happen if it was too cheap? The person might say, well, heck, I'd grab it in a minute.
Or so you have lots of other free spending money, or.
Well, yeah, I was just reading it as like the person would say, I love the house enough that if it was too cheap, man, I'd just snatch that thing up. well, what's preventing you from snatching it up now? You know, then you probably go more into, you know, the Milton model to chunk up to see what's really going on there. Is it really just too expensive? Like, is it really just outside of your budget? Or is it your mindset and your, you know, your limiting belief that you can't pay for this house?
Okay.
That's how I looked at it.
Yeah. The last one, it's I'm a bad ball player. And the reframe or the sleight of mouth pattern, there are no bad ball players. They're just people who are not confident in their ability to learn. Implication of this is that you have the ability to learn how to be a good player. Beautiful. I said that in one word. That's awesome. What if somebody came to you and said, I have cancer, I'm going to die? Well, maybe you say to them, it's not that you have cancer, but you were just learning how to overcome this battle. Which Dilts, he makes a lot of reference to medical. I believe that he helped his mom. I don't know if it was cancer or some other debilitating disease, but they had given her, I believe the story was just a few years to live or something, and then he helped her through it, maybe even cured her with NLP. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that's the story behind it. But he's,
who's that, Sean?
Robert Dilts.
Diltz?
Dilts. But he's also done allergy reframes, belief change with allergies. It's really the case where there's a few instances where I've seen that he's worked with the health part too, which is, it's phenomenal. It's nothing that really surprises me, but it's encouraging to see that direction being taken with it. And so he tells a story in his book about Sleight of Mouth. And essentially what's happening is a police officer's called for a domestic disturbance. And police officers notoriously hate these ones because they can get violent, they can get rough, they can get angry, they don't know what's really going on. Where there can be guns, there could be violence, but it's a domestic disturbance. So essentially this police officer shows up and it's a man and a wife who's just arguing. And they keep going back and forth, fighting, bickering, yelling at each other, and this police officer is outside of the house. And they know that this is a tempered situation. He hears glass breaking, things that are being destroyed in the background in the house, and he's about to knock on the door and really assert himself. However, right before that happens, the glass breaks from the front window, and a TV just flies through the window and the yard. Totally broken, shattered all over the place, and it's just destruction everywhere. So the police officer, being the smart guy that he is, he goes and he firmly knocks on the door, and the man angrily says, "Who is it?" In an intelligent fit of insight, the police officer says, "The TV repairman."
Little humor to break up a tense situation.
And so beautifully described, that's the power that such kind of choices we can have with our language. What happened in this situation is the man and the woman started laughing. Totally broke their state. They were angry. They were yelling. Totally broke their whole state. And they became receptive and they invited the man in, the police officer. And so things change. And if you look at that structurally, essentially these people that are in this state, they're in this state. And what you can do is you can pace that and you can lead it. Or what the police officer did here is he just broke the state.
Right.
Which you have to have a powerful enough communication to do so. Fortunately, he did. So we go through it and we remember our language is a representational system. We went through that a little bit earlier. And I want to remind us of the Metamodel. What does our Metamodel do for us again?
Chunks down.
Chunks down?
Gets to more detailed understanding of what that person thinks they're saying, and it can uncover, you know, the help everybody see, especially the person who made whatever statement, that the deletions or distortions or generalizations.
Valerie, for you, what do you think?
think the Metamodel is the map, not the territory. So it's seeing how someone is viewing the world, their map of the world, but it doesn't really matter the territory, like what we're actually looking at.
Okay. I would be a little bit more structured and just say that it's uncovering the deep level meanings by the surface level structures of what's being said. So something is being said, what it really means. And we do that by uncovering deletions, distortions, and generalizations. And it tries to take us to a more objective place. But ultimately, it gives us a more clear representation of what's going on in our experience. Now, I bring this up because I want to differentiate the difference between the Metamodel and Sleight of Mouth. Sleight of Mouth isn't really interested in getting a more objective perspective of reality. Does that make sense?
Did you say Sleight of Mouth is not interested in?
So even more specifically, if I could say, when we are using Sleight of Mouth, we're not necessarily interested in a more objective view of reality. Where in the Metamodel, that's exactly what we're interested in. We want to know how specifically did this happen, what implications did it cause, and how's it showing up in your life.
What's the purpose of the Sleight of Mouth then?
Change beliefs.
I'm sorry, what? You kind of went.
To change beliefs.
Change beliefs, okay.
That's not sweat, that's satisfaction.
Okay.
And so what's important about that is the beliefs aren't real.
Words aren't real. Pictures aren't real. It's all representational systems.
It's all representational systems. It's a map that we're moving around with.
So, Sean, when we're reframing, are we attempting to change beliefs, or are we just reframing to give them the opportunity to understand and figure out themselves a new belief?
Could be. I would say it just kind of depends. I mean, you could reframe for a different purpose other than changing beliefs. Yeah, because I mean...
Because can we actually change their beliefs? They actually have to do it themselves, and if we're not using, maybe a beliefs change script or going through something like that, by reframing, do we just open up the possibility for them to have a change in belief? Okay,
so you're saying more than anything that it's on a person to change their own beliefs. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, and I'm just asking, in utilizing reframing as a tool to change beliefs, as opposed to going through maybe a belief change script, and specifically doing that work. Are we leaving it on them to come up with and understand or move towards a belief change in just opening up the possibility with a reframe? And not actually making that change in their mind.
Can I ask you a question, Jude?
Sure.
Have you ever experienced a situation where somebody says something to you and you suddenly see something that you've seen, you just see it differently?
Yeah, aha moment.
Aha moment kind of thing, right? Did that change your belief?
Sure. Well, I would say that, I changed my belief in listening to that, and and I had to be open to it, because I'm sure there's times every single day that people are saying stuff that I should be having an aha moment, but I'm not open to it and not making that change, as opposed to when we're working with a specific tool like the belief change scripts, that we're actually going in and changing that subconsciously. Does that make sense? And I'm asking is this, are we utilizing this, the sleight of mouth and the reframe, in just moving them towards and then allowing that aha moment like you described, Steve? Or is it more proactive and actually changing it, assisting them in changing? I mean, we know anybody has to make the change themselves, but it seems like the reframe is just more opening it up.
My personal opinion is that you're overthinking it, Jude, because both are
that
possible.
Wouldn't be a surprise.
Yeah, I've been accused of that a lot myself, which is why I recognize it sometimes. But it could be a simple thing, like you just reframe it for somebody, and they go, "Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying," and they've just you've just semantically, yes, they've changed their belief, but you opened that door and they were open to stepping through it. In the same way, if you go through a whole belief change script, it's the same thing. They're responsible for it. You're guiding them to it. It really isn't any different, I think, conceptually. It's just the level of detail. Some things aren't simple enough to just reframe from sweat to satisfaction, right?
Right.
I did have a good friend of mine once. He was telling me all sorts of his religious beliefs, and for probably like 15 or 20 minutes. And I said almost nothing. I would ask a real short question every once in a while, and he just kept talking. And after 20 minutes, he stopped and he thought for a minute, and he said, "You just got me to question everything I believe, and you didn't even say anything." And I said, "You noticed that, did you?" He's a smart guy.
Okay, well, let's use that example, though, Steve.
Okay.
You got him to question it, but you didn't actually change his belief.
But
with your reframe. So you reframed it, got him to question it. You led him, to the possibilities,
right?
But it didn't actually go in and do a belief change.
Yeah, I didn't even reframe. I just would ask a question to let him reframe it for himself. He was a good friend, so he was open to me, right? And he's an intelligent guy, so he could see what I was saying. But my point was, in either instance, whether it's a simple thing or a complicated thing, you just kind of lead and they have to follow. Does that make sense? Because you seemed like you were drawing a line saying there was a difference. If it's a simple frame, that's not changing beliefs, but if you go through the script, then that's really going to be changing beliefs. And I was just trying to say, to me, it seems like they're the exact same thing, but just at a different level of complexity.
Yeah, no, I was just trying to understand a little bit more clearly and try to think in working with people, if you can just reframe and leave it at that and have it go to a belief change or be a belief change. But I think it can happen. But I think that, in talking through this and listening, that after opening the possibilities, perhaps the next step is, would you be open to changing that belief? If you got to a certain point in the conversation, or maybe that opens it up to where you can jump down further into understanding, the belief system. And then if they get to the point where maybe, like your friend said, that now I'm questioning that, you could say, are you open to changing that belief, whatever it may be?
I'd say that this is a little bit more abstract in that, when we aren't specifically saying this is a belief, do you want to change it? This is more smooth with it, where we see the belief and we find holes in it and we poke the holes and we give them that new perspective and they shift it themselves. And I just want to add to that generally what I see, and in my experience in working with people, it's been the case where it's always the people that are making the changes. It's me, though, leading them through the new perspectives and giving them the opportunity to see the ways that they can change. And then they take on those new perspectives and they make the change in their life in that way, if that helps there.
Yeah.
Okay. That all sound good for us?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So beliefs are relationships. to have a belief, it has to be a relationship with something. If I say this is a chair, it's not really a belief. I could say that the chair has a relationship with this object, and I would be in essence kind of right there, but then we're in semantics. But if I just have this chair here and I say this is a chair, that surely that's a belief that I assert that this thing has a nominalization, it has a name, but there's no belief about it. Okay, so that's our semantics. So for our purposes here, we have this chair, we have this water bottle. Of course, we could say that that's a belief with or a relationship with a word, but for our purposes, no, not really. It's just a thing. A belief is a relationship. So this is a durable water bottle. Okay, that's a relationship. The water bottle has a relationship with the ability to be durable, with the standard of durability, whatever that is. Notice also that it's durable according to whom? Durable according to what standard? Is it durable in a hurricane? Is it durable in a monsoon? Is it durable on a sunny day? So notice how all of those things are so subjective. The relationship, in essence, has to be imposed on by something or someone. Call it like a God principle or something like that, but the relationship doesn't exist unless I do. I'm the one that made the relationship. I made the belief saying that this is a durable water bottle. If I don't exist, the durable water bottle doesn't exist, and it's just a water bottle. So it's a relationship. And then also the subjectivity in it. Whether it's durable in a hurricane, whether it's durable on a sunny day, who's to know, who's to decide? So all those things, it's so loose, it's so abstract that there's no really heads or tails to it. Is this really a durable water bottle? First, I decide. Who am I to decide? Two, durable to what?
Relative to what, yeah.
So if we look at that and we have that for all of our beliefs, all of them we can poke holes in them.
So like your first example, then the one about what did the coach say? Coach says, I'm covered in sweat, and that's not sweat, that's satisfaction. So that have to be a belief that being sweaty would be would be satisfying, as opposed to maybe somebody who lived in a very tropical climate where sweat was something that was, I'm overheating, or I'm too hot and I'm miserable.
And that's the message based on the context more than anything. And so it's on a basketball court, right? And so what do people want on a basketball court? Probably satisfaction, and they can relate it with sweat. And you're right, if I'm in a jungle and I'm swinging a log at something, maybe I won't associate sweat with satisfaction, and maybe it'll be exhaustion.
Well, what if that person connotates sweat from their childhood and being really hot and overheated and not having air conditioning, and the coach says, that's not sweat, that's satisfaction. And they're like, no, that's misery. Sweat is misery, because their distortions, deletions, generalizations are sweat equals misery.
Right, and so that's looking a little bit more deep on what the person's saying. So if we look at just that first sentence, coach, I'm covered in sweat. And so there's some kind of negative connotation there, right? Where sweat potentially, the implication of that sentence is sweat's a bad thing. It could be because childhood traumas. It could be because of a number of things. And more than anything, what the coach is doing is moving them away from the idea of sweat. And so we're not even dealing with that. So let's say sweat is associated with this person with a childhood trauma. He was 4 years old and had a trauma experience with sweat. And every time he thinks of sweat, it's just awful for him. And so then he brings it up to his coach and he says, no, that's not sweat. That's not your trauma. It's satisfaction. It's something different.
So he's changing a belief.
Yeah, and so what the belief is then with the child who's saying this is Coach, I'm covered in sweat. So I have a relationship, me with sweat.
Right.
And then the change there is not that you're covered in sweat, but you're covered in satisfaction, essentially. You have a relationship with satisfaction and not sweat. And so it depends on the pacing and leading. Do I want to have a relationship with sweat, or do I want to have a relationship with satisfaction? If I'm in this situation, I'm the child who's playing basketball, and I notice, oh, I do have satisfaction. Okay, yeah, you're right. That's my experience. Well, then my coach has just paced and leaded me just a little bit to change my belief there.
Right.
Good? Makes sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What other thoughts, comments, observations do you have on the idea that beliefs are relationships? Go for it, Mom. I can't hear you.
Well, I don't really have any other thoughts on it. I mean, it makes sense.
Okay. How does it show up in your life?
Beliefs are relationships. Well, if you believe in something to be true, then it can show up in my life in an aspect where I limit myself in certain areas. I don't really know how to describe it, but
What's a belief you have?
a belief I used to have,
Positive or negative? One that you have now.
one that I have right now.
Could be positive, yeah.
That I can do anything I put my mind to.
Okay. And so if we notice a relationship, what do we have there, Valerie?
Well, the outcome that she's going for has to come from her. It's anything that she puts her mind to. It's not anything that I task her with. So there's intimacy between herself and what she believes is possible.
Essentially, something that she puts her mind to, an accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the relationship there.
I guess we don't hear people go around saying, I believe I can do anything you tell me to. Or anything you think I can do.
Or I can do anything that I've seen other people do one time and one time only.
Right. Yeah.
Barb, what's a belief you have?
Belief I have. It's hard when you ask that question because it's like, oh, what belief do I have? What's a belief I have? What's a belief that I have?
You believe you love me.
Oh, there you go.
I'm hoping. Oh, sorry.
Well, you know what? Now that you say that, let's just take that. And so if I said I have the belief that I love Stephen, is that really a belief? Or is that like a knowing?
So one of the things that I like about the idea that language is a representational system, and then to sort of chunk down on that, you say, I believe this chair is sturdy, or I believe I love you, or something, opens up the way that I would understand what somebody else is saying, right? So if I recognize that whatever they've just said that represents some sort of belief is just that, a belief that they have, then that helps me respect their model of the world, right? Enter into their model of the world, see things the way that they do, and then I can, at the very least, converse better relate better with them, or possibly I can see something that I could change that belief that I think would be better for them. If I change their belief to sweat isn't the bad childhood experience because you couldn't afford air conditioning. Now sweat is the result of hard work and accomplishment, and you should be satisfied about that. You know, especially if I'm a coach, that's my job, right? They trust me. That helped them achieve more than they thought that they could. So, you know, it depends upon, it's like you said, Sean, it's situational. But so I love the idea that realizing that a lot of things that show a relationship between this and that is just a belief. If I understand that, I can understand that person better. So if Barb says, I love you, that's a belief. But what does that really mean is your question, right? But it means whatever you want it to mean.
Right.
It means whatever you want it to mean.
Right.
You've made a choice.
Yeah.
And you're going to act in accordance with whatever you think love is.
And
or
let's break it down even.
That work is, or, you know, whatever.
We can break it down even further, and we can say love. What is love? Love is a nominalization. Love is a process that somebody does, and we've nominalized it into a feeling. We've given a fixed process a name, and we've made it fixed. And so where we can go wrong with our language in that and interpreting somebody else's is, I don't know your nominalization from my nominalization. So you're exactly right. When she says, I love you, it's her nominalization, and she's using love in the way that she shows you it.
But then doesn't that certainly turn it right back into a process? I mean, I agree with you completely, Sean, that to use shorthand, Hollywood has turned love into a nominalization. It's a feeling, right? I've fallen out of love. I'm falling in love, and it's just a feeling. But the words that you just used were how she shows me she loves me. Now it's back into a process, right?
If she says it and that's how she does it, absolutely.
Yeah. I see Valerie imagining real hard there.
I want to get back to Barb's question. Essentially, is it a belief, I love Stephen, or is it a knowing?
Right.
What do you guys think?
I think she knows.
I'm not sure what the difference is, but if she believes that she knows it, then it's a knowing, but it's still a belief.
Okay.
Yeah. How do we differentiate those, Sean?
Okay.
A knowingness and a belief.
My point, Jude, my opinion is that I'm not sure there is a difference.
I don't think so. Yeah, I agree with you, Steve.
And so if we're looking, and what we'd have to do is we'd have to visit Barb's map of the world here, and we'd have to understand maybe what knowing is. Or if we just take it in the context of what we're looking at here, and we're looking at beliefs, we can also do that. So, I mean, the steps we could take is we could say, okay, Barb, what's knowing, what's beliefs for you? But if we're just looking at beliefs and the relationships between things, then what we can really see and we can find out about the world is that all these things, everything that we think about the world, are all beliefs. So if we look back at our Dilts model, about our environment, about our behaviors, our capabilities, our identity, all the way up, all those things, they're all essentially beliefs about who we are, about what we're capable of, about our environment. And so we can have beliefs about our beliefs. And we can have beliefs about knowing. And all it really is relationships. So Barb has a relationship with the word knowing and what it means for her. I'm not necessarily sure, but in this context, if we're talking about beliefs, I'd say absolutely. When she says she loves Stephen, it's a belief that she has, and the relationship would be her having a relationship to the feeling of love for somebody else.
So is the relationship part of how people become very attached to their beliefs? Because they have a relationship with their beliefs, there's a value exchange and there's reciprocity. I give my beliefs life and my beliefs do something for me in exchange. And is that why certain beliefs that are more near and dear to us are harder to let go of or shift because of the relational aspect to it?
Wow, way to take us deeper.
I mean, like if a belief was something I could put on a shelf and go retrieve it when it's useful and ignore it when it's not useful, if my belief's in that category, then my attachment, the relational aspect, is one of, I don't even know how to characterize it, but that's different than a belief that I hold really close to my heart.
A belief that's my girlfriend.
Or the feeling that I have for my romantic partner, I think is a good example of it. But like I get so attached to that reality that I'm so deep in that relationship. I've invested in that relationship with this idea, right? We're talking about this thing. It's not really a person, but I'm invested in the idea, not the person even, maybe.
I'm very interested in this and where you took this discussion. So if you could chunk it down to a specific maybe idea that somebody have that they're really invested in so we can see this even clearer. And I'll try to think of one too. Anybody else got it, let us know.
It's hard.
Let's get down to the religious stuff. So maybe somebody has the belief that all people should be Jewish. Somebody has the belief that all people should be Christian. Whatever it is, they have that belief. They're married to that belief. They would fight for that belief. They would die for that belief.
Okay.
And they hold that belief right here. It's so close. They're so related to that belief. Now expand on kind of what you were saying there with how close they are, where you could put it and have it on a shelf, or you can have it in your heart, and what the difference is.
Yeah, I'm so invested in my religious ideation and my faith that it has become such a defining factor of myself that that I'm so intertwined in that relationship, I can't separate myself out. So changing the belief, changing my faith would mean reformulating who I am, and that's so not possible for me because of fear of the unknown and anxiety or what have you. So I don't know who I am if I'm not a child of God, right? Like it becomes so intertwined that there is no knowing outside of that relationship. And I would imagine, now I'm speculating, but I would imagine that breaking state and reframing those beliefs is part of religious radicalization, right? You hear about people that go get exposed to a different religion and become radicalized. There's got to be something about the relational aspect. I don't know what their radicalization strategies are. Like, I don't know how they go about doing that, but it is a process.
Okay.
I don't know. Is part of that what you were going for?
Yeah, and we're going to look at, and it's going to be a little bit more next week, is we're going to go exactly into the Dilts model, the logical levels, and we're going to see how those are different things with language. And so absolutely, you're right that if I'm going to go ahead and talk about somebody's religion with them, their purpose all the way up here, it's going to be a different change than if I'm talking about their behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I saw in that.
I'm just thinking that some beliefs are so much easier to let go of than others.
And so in your example, the one where religion was, I mean, it was their identity, it was their purpose. If you change those things, there's such a big change that person has to hold on to it. And it has to be difficult for them to change. However, an environment, that's a change. It's typically much, much easier for somebody to change.
Right. And I think some people have the similar attachment to beliefs around like their career, you know, like, oh, I am an artist. Like that's a belief that they hold near and dear to their heart. And to be disabused of that notion is really can cause like a psychotic break for some individuals if they're that fragile. But like, think about people that are not able to evolve their career, you know, like, my painting hand gets injured and I never recover from that. I don't know.
Well, this is also fascinating because we're only consciously aware of a small percentage of our beliefs.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, take it even the next step, and it's mind-boggling, really, at least for me. And my subconscious beliefs.
Not a comfortable feeling, Jude. That
Sorry to keep you up tonight, Valerie.
Can name.
And if you just add to that, if we really look at what beliefs are, they're nothing. They're just made up stuff anyways. So we're unsure. We don't even know about the stuff that's made up, make-believe anyways.
Tenacious distortions and generalizations from the time we were born till now.
Yeah. And they're all based on you and really what you're determining the world. So you might as well make it whatever you want to make it.
Right. Because 95% of them are subconscious that we've not had we have little control over until we make them come to our consciousness and do something with them.
Mom, where are you at on this?
Oh, I'm just finding it fascinating what you guys are talking about. I'm just listening.
Hey, I got to run, everybody. Thanks.
Take care, dude.
It's pretty interesting.
The part, I was just looking at your script here, Sean, where it says, what are your beliefs? There's empowering ones and limiting ones, which is exactly what we're exploring in our Thursday evening classes. So I love that.
Well, if you could define it for us, what would it be?
If I would define what exactly?
Empowering ones or limiting ones?
I haven't gotten to that part of the book. No, I'm kidding. Limiting beliefs are, first of all, just beliefs, just a belief. Everything is a belief. Everything is a representational system. So limiting ones are ones that stand between you and something that you want to accomplish. Empowering ones are ones that put you in a resourceful state, ones that help you. They do not stand in the way, but they help you get from where you are to what you want to accomplish.
Couldn't a limiting belief also be something that holds you back from where you want to go?
I thought that's what I said.
Did you?
Yeah.
I'm challenging you to change metaprogram, Stephen. So if you notice your language in there, you had said that a limiting belief will stop you from going towards something you want, right?
Oh, okay. So keep going with that
So the challenge that I held out for you was there's something that's standing in the way from you getting from what you want, right? Or there's something holding you back. Your challenge is to see anything that's holding somebody else back. And so just having the flexibility to see that in other people's is a way that you can develop further in NLP.
Are you saying that the way that I phrase the limiting belief applies to a towards strategy, but not an away strategy? Okay.
More so a towards strategy, yeah. So somebody who you're talking is right on par with towards strategies. They're going to be like, yeah, limiting beliefs, they always get in my way from what I really want.
Okay, I see that now. That's a good point.
Just a subtle little thing.
Yeah, I know it is subtle, but it's a good point because I have always found it really difficult to, and now I've got better labels to understand what my difficulty was, but I've always found it difficult to talk to people with away strategies.
Oh yeah.
I didn't understand why people paid any attention to what was in the past, what was behind them. I just didn't get that, so I couldn't talk to them. But now I understand it better, and I can see how my language reflects what I didn't understand.
Okay. The only thing else I would say is that everything's based on an outcome. I've done a lot of work in the last week and a half with other people, and they seem to be missing that. Everything needs to be based on the outcome. Then we have somewhere to judge our success or our failure on. So limiting beliefs, they prevent me from getting to where I want to go, or they hold me back from getting there as quick as I could. Empowering beliefs, they help me get to my outcome quicker, or they get me closer to my outcome.
Yeah, they help me, empowering beliefs help me get to where I'm going, or help me get away from what I want to get away from, and to be more explicit about it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's look at one of the beliefs that we had here. Mom, what was yours again? Just say it for us.
I believe I can do anything I put my mind to.
Okay. You believe that you can do anything that you put your mind to.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know that?
Because I've proven it to myself before.
Okay. And what makes it that way?
What do you mean?
So,
What that way?
yeah, what makes it possible for that to be that way?
Positive energy, law of attraction.
Okay, cool.
Not having limiting beliefs.
So if we go ahead and we look at what I just did is I elicited a belief statement. And this is incorporating both the cause, the effect, and the evidence and the meaning of the belief. What people will most often they'll give you is the meaning. The meaning was I can do anything that I set my mind to. And if we have the effect, that was because I've proven it to myself. The evidence that she's done it before. So she has evidence of that happening. And then the cause is because if I had to go ahead and impose my model of the world, I'd say even more simplicity, she would say that that's the way that she believes the world works. But we'll go ahead and we'll use law of attraction and energy and all that. So because of energy and law of attraction, and because she has shown it to herself over and over again, my mom believes that she can do anything that she sets her mind to. That's the full belief statement.
Okay.
Now, I'll go ahead and do
Becky,
it.
I thought you were more of an away strategy person. That's a very towards strategy.
I'm a little bit of both, actually. It depends on the situation, but yeah, I'm moving towards doing anything that I set my mind to right now. But at the same time, I'm also moving away from.
You're still here. Don't worry.
Okay. I'm also
this
moving
screen
away from being where I've been, this job I hate, and that kind of thing. And so, I do a little bit of both.
Okay. It was just an observation.
I'm glad you challenged it.
Yeah, definitely.
And so if we look at that belief, we have several areas to poke in it. What I want you guys to have the ability to do is also to see beliefs in what I like to call the table. So if we have a table, we have the tabletop, it's the belief. And then we have these legs. We can go ahead and we can take the legs. If we take the legs out, then we don't have the belief. It crumbles, the table's all gone. And so we have this model. And if we look at it, I'm trying to figure out how to make it all fancy with my mouse going and like showing it and stuff. It'd be so cool if I could do that right now, but I forgot how to do it. At least you guys can see my mouse. So this is the basic like belief statement. If we want to really get into what's going on with somebody's beliefs, we can get further into it and we can then use our sleight of mouth patterns in this way. So for example, if we're looking at that, we might go ahead and start with law of attraction. We might say it's not the law of attraction, but it's how nature is. And then that might reinforce her belief.
So, Sean, I'm looking at that diagram, and I've been looking at it this whole time, trying to, there you go, trying to understand it. And am I right to see that sort of in a circular way? In other words, somebody starts with cause, cause and effect, and then the meaning. We had a date for 7 o'clock. It's 7:30. That means you don't love me. So you then would ask the question, how do you know that, and what makes it that way? So you've gone in this clockwise thing, and then you can identify something and change the cause and effect and meaning sequence. Is that?
And essentially what we're doing here is we're just giving more leverage points to touch the belief. So let's look at the belief. If we have the meaning and the criteria, and that specific one is, you were late, you don't love me. And so I say, how do you know that? And then the person will say, because you were 30 minutes late. Okay, and what makes it that way? Well, if people aren't on time, they don't love each other. If people don't respect each other, they don't love each other. Okay, and so now we have several different places to move around and attack that belief. So I could say, okay, so it always means that if somebody is 2 minutes over the time that they should be, that they don't love and respect the person. So before, what we were looking at, we were just looking at the meaning and the criterion. We're looking at just attacking that, which is definitely useful for us. Absolutely. However, this makes it a little bit more precise for us, because then we can attack the cause. We can also attack the evidence. We could say, it wasn't that I'm 2 minutes late, it was that I was parking. And again, these aren't real. So was I parking or not?
Yeah, I spent the last 20 minutes circling the blocks trying to find a place to park, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I ended up finding a place that I had to walk 10 minutes to get here or whatever, yeah.
And then we might even say, it's not that I didn't make an effort to get on time, it's that my effort was in finding a parking space.
Yeah.
And so that's more working with the cause and the effect rather than the meaning. And so it's just ways to give you more options. It's a little bit kind of complex if we want to get all the way into it. However, it's going to give you more abilities to change the belief there. And a lot of times people haven't even looked at what the effect is or what the cause is to their own beliefs. So they don't even know those things.
Right.
Valerie's son was peeking in.
Sorry, I was still staring at the...
Yeah, we gave him a little wave.
Yeah, I'm just really trying to grok all the information in that chart there. There's
Okay.
a lot there to...
So let's go ahead and use more examples, because it's gonna make more sense the more we do it. So in every... Go for it.
Okay. I was at a barbecue this afternoon, and I was talking to my favorite 11-year-old, and she was telling me how her teacher this year, when somebody has a messy desk and they can't find a paper, that she comes over and she literally dumps their whole desk out onto the floor. And I said, well, that's not very respectful. And she said, yeah, but having a neat desk is important, is necessary to be successful. That was her belief. And that's what this is the message that the teacher is ingraining in her, which is kind of a different issue. And so I was asking her, so what is it about having a neat desk that makes you successful? And when you have a neat desk, are you successful? And when you don't have a neat desk, do you experience success? So trying to go through that loop, and then using her friend, who apparently is the one that often has the desk dumped on the floor, is your friend successful? And how do you know that? And I don't know if this is a good example, but it's just the one that's really fresh in my mind. So really trying to unpack it with Hannah, which...
Those are exactly it. Those questions are a little bit wary of maybe where the answer will take you. These questions here are more precise in that, because if I ask her, and if I do the comparison there, I might get the effect, I might get the evidence, but that also might lead me to project some things.
Okay.
Because if I say, okay, so your friend's successful, no, she's not, okay, and you're always successful and you never have your desk taken out. Okay, so then for you, then the evidence, the effect is that success in having your success criteria, what you've seen is you have success based on your evidence and your experience. That's essentially what we've summed it up to, but we've done it kind of the long way around. And so go ahead and pretend to be this 11-year-old for us. And you said having a nice desk means that success, that you're headed for success, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so how do you know that?
Because I can find my paper when the teacher asks for it. That's how I...
And what makes it that way?
I know where all my things are, so I can get my hands on them quickly.
Cool. And what we also learned there is that the student, as Valerie was being her, also equates success being to the teacher's approval. Or the teacher, if I can take care of the teacher, then I have success.
I wish she had been at the barbecue, because I was really trying to debunk this with her, and it didn't work.
Good for you for trying, Valerie.
Aww.
And what was the cause again, one more time for us? So essentially you can get the teacher the paper that she needs. Was that it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the cause is what? She can't find her paper quickly.
Mm-hmm.
The effect is what? That the teacher...
So success is knowing where my things are?
Or being able to give the teacher
being organized.
the paper.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the cause, what makes it that way?
Everything is organized.
Okay. So because everything is organized, then this child can give the teacher what she needs, which then leads her to be a successful student.
Well, yeah, and successful in life.
Or successful in life. Okay, perfect.
That was my problem.
Yeah. Good. Factory education, right?
Oh.
Yeah. And so we can take the belief apart anywhere in there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That was a good example. Does that make a little bit more sense, Stephen, as far as the diagram is?
I'm still struggling with it, but I'm sure I'm getting there. Yeah, it makes a little more sense. Yes.
The next one, belief. Polar bears are dangerous. So the practitioner will say, well, how do you know that? Evidence. I once saw on TV a man being attacked by a polar bear. Reasonable assertion. Okay. So the evidence, or the practitioner, what makes it that way? It must be in their nature. So because it is in their nature, polar bears are dangerous and will attack humans as evidenced by what I watched on television. So if we have that full belief statement, it's much, much more powerful than if we just have polar bears are dangerous. So we can attack this, that polar bears' nature are dangerous. That's a little bit more powerful than just polar bears are dangerous. Evidenced by what I watched on television. Well, do you always believe what you watch on television? That's another way for us to navigate that as well. And the point of the diagram, the whole thing I would say, is that we're just automatically building these beliefs up, building these relationships between things through this kind of process where maybe we have a cause, maybe we have some evidence, and it leads to us having this belief about something, this relationship that serves us. Maybe that's making a little bit more sense.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen, what's one of your beliefs?
It is hard.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that Corvettes are a fun car.
Okay, so we got a relationship here of a Corvette having the process of being fun, a fun car. Right?
Yes.
Okay. And say the belief one more time for us.
I believe Corvettes are fun cars.
How do you know that?
I know that because I had fun driving Corvettes.
Okay. What makes it that way?
It makes it that way because fun to me is driving fast and hard.
Okay.
And Corvettes are capable of that.
Oh, okay. So because driving fun, according to Stephen, is driving fast and hard, and Corvettes are capable of doing that, and he's had the experience of doing that in a Corvette, it means that Corvettes are fun cars. Have you ever found a Corvette that wasn't able to drive fast and hard?
I drove a 57 once, and I had to remind myself that it was fast and hard for 1957. But
Was it a fun car?
it was a fun car. It was convertible.
Okay. So you have to drive these cars essentially to have them be fun cars.
For me, yes.
Cool. So it's all the Corvettes that you drive are fun cars.
Haven't missed yet.
And the ones that are sitting, they're not fun cars, or are they?
Just because they're not doing what they're capable of doesn't mean that they aren't capable of it.
What are they?
Well, I don't check under the hood and make sure there's actually an engine and brakes. But
So they're probably not fun cars then.
if they didn't have the engine and brakes, and then they would not be a fun car. But
Fair enough. So we also saw that his belief has to take place in his own experience. So we're just mapping out these beliefs even further. And essentially these two questions, they give us a real guide to do it. And we can do a little bit more of Melton and Metamodel patterns as well with it that will help us get even more of a clear sense about Stephen's belief in this case. Does that make a little bit more sense there?
you missed it, Valerie. It was a great example about Corvettes being fun cars.
I'm sorry.
But yeah, that did help, Sean.
Cool. So now we've kind of gone over all these beliefs and everything, and we're going to have that as a background. However, I don't want it to limit us. If you find it useful, use it. If not, we'll just be working with meaning and criterion, which isn't a problem. So we can work with the belief, we can work with the legs of the belief, doesn't really matter. This will give you more power if you understand it and you can use it. If you can't, though, just worry about the meaning, and we can change the meanings of beliefs. Fair?
I see. Okay.
And it might take a little while or practice to do that. That's fair enough. But let's look first at content versus context reframing. Have you guys studied this, gone through this, gone into it? The differences between these two?
Didn't we do an exercise on these once with you, Sean, back here?
I believe that I challenged you to find these. But I don't remember how that went or exactly what happened there.
Yeah, I don't have a clear recollection of it either.
If we remember the content, what again is the content? And not necessarily in content structure, but it could still be applied here.
What is the content?
Yeah, what is content?
The content changes. It's what has actually happened or occurred, the events that have occurred, not the meaning behind them.
Okay, so I went and I went inside the house and I didn't wipe my shoes or my boots on the rug and I tracked snow in the house.
Mm-hmm.
Content?
So wiping, yeah, your feet and snow in the house, yeah.
It's all
That's
content, right?
The structure is you just coming in the house.
Yeah.
Or, you know, you would come in the house every day.
And so if we look at a content reframe, what are we doing then?
We're changing the situation. We're reframing the situation that actually happened.
What happened in specifics?
Well, I walked in the house and I wiped my feet off and
Okay.
didn't track snow in the house.
Okay. And let's go ahead and the key things here that need to be in place is, one, we have to pace the person's experience. So yes, I did come into the house and I didn't wipe my feet off. Okay, those are facts. We're not going to try to lie with the facts either. So we have to pace the experience and we have to tell the truth. How do I change the meaning of that through changing the content though? Give it a shot.
How do I change the meaning of it? Ooh, that's a tough one.
Can I take a shot at it, Becky?
Yes, please. I hate it when he catches me at a loss for words.
So, try to imagine the situation around it. But if I said, so your, let's say your wife keeps your house nice and clean, and you walked in and got mud and water all over her nice clean floors. Is that right?
Yep.
All of a sudden you see it differently.
That's our content. Yep.
But aren't you trying to change? You want us to change the content?
Well, I did change the content, but the real point of changing the content is to help them see it differently, to reframe it. Right?
And we have to make the meaning more useful.
I didn't wipe my boots. What's the big deal? The big deal is what I just the different content that I put in there. That was the same thing, but it was different, right?
Hold on, repeat what you said.
How it affects.
What was your reframe?
It was so profound, I don't think I can repeat it.
Your wife keeps the house clean.
Oh, yeah. So your wife keeps the house nice and clean, yes. And you walked in and got mud and water all over the nice clean floors. Okay. So that was the exact same situation, but the content was different. So it was from not that person's perspective, but their wife's perspective in that case, right?
Yeah,
so
and
saw it different.
We want to make it better or more useful in addition.
Yeah, I see that as more useful.
And so, and that one's tough to say because the wife might get angry in that. So let's say that this specifically is in a therapeutic context where you're about the husband, the wife, and then a therapist. And so you have the wife that says he's always marching in the house and he just marks his feet with snow everywhere, mud, gets all over the place, right? The therapist might say it's yes, he comes in the house and gets snow all over the place because he's so excited to see you.
Yeah.
Or he's marching in the house with snow on his feet because all he can think about is kissing you. That's changing the content to make it a more favorable outcome for the situation.
Right.
So I reaffirm what happened and I don't lie about what happened. I don't say, no, he didn't wipe his feet on, he didn't have mud on his shoes. Because that would just be a lie. It would be disingenuous. It would take away from the experience of the person who I'm talking with. But instead, we pace their experience. Yeah, he marched right in there without wiping his feet because he couldn't wait to kiss you. Oh, okay. Now what's happened is there's a different meaning associated with his actions. Mm-hmm. Before, what was underlying there, the meaning, Was that essentially my husband doesn't love me, or my husband disrespects me by not doing that, or something in the other way? This essentially is looking at an effect or evidence. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
This example is that my husband tracks snow in on the ground and doesn't consider me. So if we're looking at the meaning, it's that my husband doesn't respect me, potentially. How do you know that your husband doesn't love you? Because he's tracking mud and stuff in on the carpet without consideration of me. What makes it that way? Husbands should listen to their wife and not track mud and stuff on the carpet if they love them. So right here, we're just attacking that sentence of, this is the proof, this is the evidence. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Barbie, you want to take the next one, that example right there?
No. This person is yelling at me. It's not that they are yelling at you, but they are expressing themselves loudly to you.
How do we feel about that one?
I actually like it because it changes it from an action being done at me or at that person, and instead it reframes it to I'm sorry, I'm not.
Yeah, it
reframes
it to from
yeah.
you to
That's
the
what
other
I'm trying to
person.
say. Thank you. So it takes the focus off of the person who's feeling they're being yelled at, and puts the focus on the person who is talking loudly, or the person who's doing the yelling. So it's kind of like, it's not you, it's them. To put it in really simple terms.
Yeah, it's a better outcome.
And yeah, it's a better outcome. And I think if I said to somebody, this person keeps yelling at me, and somebody else said, well, they're not yelling at you, they're just expressing themselves loudly to you, that would make me go, I never thought of it that way. It is a way of them expressing themselves. They just do it very loudly. Okay, all right. And then it's like, I don't take it personally.
And
I think it helps that way.
If we go back to our model and we look at this is, again, effect or evidence. This person is yelling at me.
Mm-hmm.
We look at meaning. We could say this person doesn't love me because they yell at me. Or what we could say is that this person is treating me poorly. Okay, how do you know that? Well, because they're yelling at me.
Mm-hmm.
And then what makes it that way? But essentially, we got the whole belief statement there, and we're just working at the place of evidence. Now, if I go ahead and change yelling to expressing themselves loudly, then that's probably going to crumble apart whatever this meaning was, because expressing loudly, it likely isn't going to mean disrespect or unlove or anything like that. But of course, it depends on the person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it'll at least get them to question their assumption.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe, depending on the person.
And Stephen, you want to do the next one?
My son is always fighting kids at school. Reframe is, it's not that he's fighting, but he is just defending himself. See, I would have asked a question. I like to reframe by asking questions. That's my personal technique. But I would have said, well, is he attacking them or is he defending himself?
Which one do you think might get more rapport at that point? It's variable, but
yeah, I think, well, and I think that's the right question, Sean, and that's why I like to often ask questions, because in terms of rapport, if you're taking what they're saying and you're trying to change it, people can resist that. But if you're asking a question, it seems like you're entering into their world a little bit more and keeping the rapport a little better, potentially.
More of a reasonable chance of getting rapport in that state. You're setting yourself up for more of a chance of rapport.
Exactly. I think so, yeah.
So our next one is a context reframe. And so this is changing not what happened, but changing in the situation, where it happened, the environment, so that it's more useful. Throat's a little scratchy. So the example that I have for you here, and I want to pose this one to Valerie. She always wants to talk about feelings. My wife, she always wants to talk about feelings. And so I'll challenge you first to see if you can do a context reframe. What different context would this be beneficial if you wanted to have a woman that always wanted to talk about feelings?
Did we lose Valerie?
I'm here. Wait, am I going first?
Yeah, it sounds you with it. No worries.
I mean, I heard that part, and then I thought you were talking to Steven, and I thought maybe I misunderstood. Okay. My wife always wants to talk about feelings.
So what can be beneficial here?
That's awesome. So that's awesome. Especially when that time comes when no one else is knowing how you feel.
Okay. And the trick here, if you ever struggle with this one, is to come up with different situations where it'd be beneficial here. Try this situation, try this situation, try this situation. And so I would say, okay, the person says, my wife always wants to talk with me about emotions. And say, well, isn't that great? Then you don't have to watch emotional chick flicks with her all the time.
That's a good one.
I like Valerie's better.
Oh, thanks, Steven.
And so it's just changing the context, changing the situation that would be appropriate for that.
So like that's awesome because now you don't have to talk about her mother.
Exactly.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. That's great because she doesn't have to help you figure out how to build your boat.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
She'll really stay with your hair when you want to talk about sports.
Mom, if you want to do the next example. Do you need me to send you this?
Okay. This person is yelling at me. That's great. It means they will make a great cheerleader for you when you need them to. Well, so this person is yelling at me, so that's great. That means, whenever somebody does you wrong, they'll stand up for you or they'll be heard.
Okay. And just changing the situation. In some context, having somebody that always yells at you is going to be a good thing.
Right.
And Barb, last one.
My son is always fighting kids at school. Isn't that great? You won't have to worry about your daughter being bullied.
That's a good one.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How else could you say that one? My son is always fighting kids at school.
Isn't that great that he knows how to stand up for himself?
And what would that be? You think that would be a content or context?
Yeah, it's probably more of a content.
I see it as context.
Is it the action that's changing or the situation that's changing?
Right.
Situation. I see it exactly as really just the flip side of you don't have to worry about your daughter being bullied. You don't have to worry about your son being bullied. He's standing up for himself.
And standing up for himself is the action.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
So it's changing bullying people or fighting people
And
to
that's the
Right, that's the
content as
content.
opposed to the context.
Right.
the
So maybe,
action of it.
yeah.
Mm.
So maybe a better context one could be, let's see, my son is always fighting kids at school. Trying to, could say something like, I don't know if I want to use that's great, but that's great. He might be setting himself up to be a prize fighter one day.
There you go. That also, though, is still content. Because the son isn't fighting anymore. He's setting himself up to be a prize fighter.
Mm,
How could we do that in a context shift?
okay.
Context reframe. How could we do that one? And so what we're changing here is not the actions, but we're changing the context. Mom?
I was thinking, I'm not there yet. Let's see.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
My son is always fighting at school. And you're trying to change the context, so that's great. I don't really have one. I mean, I would have, mine would have been exactly what Barb said. Maybe he'll be a great wrestler, you know, that kind of thing, or a boxer or whatever. But that's still context then.
Mm-mm.
No?
That's the context. That's what we're looking for. So what I meant to say is no, that's not content, that's context. So my son's always fighting at school. That's great. He's going to make a or he can use that to be a great prize fighter.
Exactly.
Or isn't that going to be useful when he's a prize fighter?
Exactly.
Even better in that way. Because the
So would this
context has just shifted.
So would this one fit then? Son's always fighting kids at school. That's great. He has such passion about the things he believes in.
Which one do you think that is?
Context.
I think that's context. That's what I'm asking. No?
Valerie?
You're on
we
mute,
can't
Valerie.
hear you.
Is it me?
There you
There
go.
you
I got
Yeah.
distracted. I'm sorry.
No worries. So say it one more time for us again, Stephen.
Oh, my son is always fighting kids at school. Response is, that's great. He has such passion about the things he believes in.
Okay. So
And the
what's
question,
changed
Valerie,
in
is
that?
that context or content? I'm thinking it's context.
I don't know.
Sean's
Okay.
challenging me on that.
Yeah. Always fighting kids at school. Change your situation. Content.
Change of meaning.
Action.
Okay. Okay.
Change of action. Okay.
And so one more time, or isn't that great?
That he has such passion about his beliefs.
So we said that even more accurately, an assertion about what's going on, we would say, and this is being sub-communicated in the sentence, isn't that great that he has such passion about his beliefs? The sub-communication, what I'm saying when I say that, is he's just expressing passion in his beliefs.
Right.
So the difference in what shifted here is he was fighting before, and now he's expressing passion in his beliefs. And so the difference, what's changed, is a change in action.
I see a change in meaning. I don't. But the
meaning's
content was
always
the
gonna
action, which was fighting, and he's still fighting.
The meaning's always going to change in both of these, and that's the
Right.
purpose.
Hmm.
And
I'm
so
not seeing that.
let's look at a different one.
You see it?
Mm-mm. I'm having a hard time with this one.
So break down this sentence. Isn't that great? He has such passion about his beliefs. Now, this is a statement about what he has, but what also is being subcommunicated is what he's doing to express what he has, right? So what I'm doing is I'm changing this. I'm saying,
Okay.
it's not my son is always fighting at school. What I'm saying is he's expressing passion. That's
Right.
the change. That's the difference, right?
That's
Right.
a change of action rather than a change of situation.
Yeah.
A change of situation would be, that's so awesome. I can see him doing his closing arguments in the courtroom now, like in the future. Like,
Isn't that going to benefit him when he's a ruthless lawyer?
yeah,
Beating up people in the courtroom, yeah.
that's great. I hear that bulldog lawyers make a lot of money these days.
Okay, that's good, Valerie. I like that.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm still kind of struggling. So from Valerie's example, it's going to benefit him when he's a ruthless lawyer. How is that different from it's going to make him a great wrestler or a prize fighter one day?
Because he's still fighting, whereas in the courtroom, he is advocating for his client and being a lawyer and doing lawyery things. That's not fighting. Society doesn't consider a lawyer a fighter.
Okay.
And maybe this is a stretch because there's a difference between fighting and wrestling or fighting and boxing. But I think those are just a little too much. Those are really similar.
Let's take those ones. What were they again, Barb? Isn't that going to benefit him when he's a prize fighter?
Yeah.
And what's changed here? He's fighting kids at school. He's doing this behavior.
Uh-huh.
And then, essentially we're subcommunicating here that he's just practicing to be a prize fighter.
Prize fighter.
So what's changed? Is it a change of situation or a change of action?
I get that's the part. To me, it's like
I think that's action.
He's still fighting. He's still
right.
fighting.
He's still fighting,
But
situation.
he's
so
practicing.
change the situation, right? But
And
to me, the situation has changed now. Instead of on the playground, this is his profession. This is what he's making money at. And so to me, that's a change of situation.
Context. Absolutely.
Where it occurs. Okay. Yeah, I'm starting to see now.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. What's another one we could do with content? I'm going to challenge you with this, Mom. My son is always fighting kids at school. So your task is to change the action there. Change what's going on in my son is always fighting at school.
My son is always standing up for himself.
Good.
That's pretty much it. Yeah, he's always standing up for himself. So he's not necessarily fighting. He's just standing up for himself. Or he's always real adamant about his beliefs. Standing up for his beliefs.
Yep, that's it. Son is always fighting kids at school. He's not fighting. He's standing up for himself.
Mm-hmm.
In all of these, the meaning has changed. And then the context, just the environment's changed. In the content, the action's changed. Is the action really different?
Mm-mm.
No.
It's the perception. It's the perception looking at it.
Meaning of the action, right?
And the meaning has changed, absolutely. Cool. I got a few more for you. She always wants to argue.
She always wants to discuss the meaning of things. Discuss our different point of views.
Okay, say it more eloquently for us so we can really use it in a conversation. My wife, she always wants to argue with me.
My wife always is,
No, we're having a conversation. I'm talking to you. My wife always wants to argue with me. You need to change my belief. My wife, she always wants to argue with me. How can you help me
maybe
with
she's
change that
not
belief?
arguing. Maybe she's just trying to discuss her point of view.
There you go. What kind of change is that?
Context, or context, change of action. Like, instead of arguing, she's discussing her point of view.
Let me zoom this in. I know that you're having a tough time seeing over there. You zoom in. Cool. There you go. Let me write it all down though.
Argue or discuss, wouldn't that be changing of action? Because it's not, they didn't change the situation. They're still in the same situation. They're still arguing or discussing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Expressing a point of view.
I guess.
Right? So my wife wants to argue. She doesn't want to argue. She is just expressing a point of view. Okay, so what's changed? First she was arguing, and now she's doing what?
The action. The action. She's expressing her point of view.
Change of action, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what's the difference? Which one?
The content.
Good. Okay, let's do a context change on that. How could we do that?
Yeah.
My wife always wants to argue.
Are you asking me?
Anyone?
Okay. I don't know yet.
How about that's great. She'll get a lower price on the car that you want to buy.
Awesome. She'll get a lower price on car insurance.
That's great. Yes.
And that's just changing the situation, making it more useful for you. And it's not so much important that you need to know the differences in these two, but it just helps being able to do both of them. Being able to go and do a context reframe, and able to do a content reframe. They're immensely useful. Milton Erickson had them in his back pocket all the time. It's absolutely just wonderful tools.
I know, like for me, doing a content change comes a lot easier, and I think that's why I was struggling with seeing the what would be a context change. So I need to practice the context change.
Okay. How you guys feel about the whole everything?
Good.
Mm-hmm. Feeling good.
Okay.
Useful.
This is a good stretch.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's pretty much just the beginning. I mean, what we looked at here is really just the start of sleight of mouth patterns. Probably the most simple one is the content versus context reframe.
Wow.
But yeah, we'll go and we'll find out some more next week, and excited to learn about that. But what you've seen here is it's pretty much the basis for what we're going and we're tackling. You know what beliefs are? Beliefs are relationships, so they're pretty damn arbitrary. And then you also know the general model for how a belief is formed, where it has a meaning, a criterion, it's based on evidence, and there's something that causes that. All three of those parts, they're able or areas that you can go ahead and you can change a belief. Where you'll see more and more of that as we go. And now you know at least a little bit more about content reframes. And for next week, we'll go into more tools similar to content reframes. We'll also look at the Dilts model, the logical levels and how that applies with language, because it's a different thing when you tell somebody that they aren't a bad person, they just did a bad behavior. And so that'll be pretty useful for us, as well as I imagine some more exercise with these.
For sure.
Cool.
Yep.
Way cool. Yeah, I like it. Definitely, like Valerie said, a good stretch.
Mhm.
My brain was stretched. Now it's tired.
Yeah. I remember when we used to put you on overdrive, Stephen, where you're just, by the end of 2 hours in an NLP session, you were kind of wiped.
Yes.
I'm really wondering how this is going to color my week. Like I have this image of me going into my week and doing Sleight of Mouth on, like, just for the heck of it. That's not coffee. That's, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can see. I would imagine you would have plenty of opportunities.
Bean flavored water. I don't know.
That's a great one.
I wonder if I'm just going to go crazy on this.
That's just burnt beans flavoring your water.
This isn't a meeting. This is just a chance collection of my team together. Now shut up and pay attention. Like, I don't know.
Oh, it's funny.
You hate meetings? Great. This is no longer a meeting. Like,
Yeah.
This is an organization of minds.
Right. I was going to say it's a coming of minds. Yeah.
I might go change the titles on my events now
That would be fun.
for my work calendar.
Yeah, just like take the word meeting and come up with a bunch of different ways to describe meeting, and the 10 o'clock, whatever. And
I'm going to go do that.
that would be fun.
That'll be applicable.
Trip out your whole office. It's not a meeting that we're having. In the email, you just say it's not a meeting that we're having.
Yeah.
Rather a coming together of minds.
I'm going to do it. I got to figure out a way to frame all of my one-to-ones right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Solitary encounter with your boss.
Oh gosh, that sounds even worse.
No?
How could we do a context reframe on that? It's not a one-to-one meeting. Or isn't it great that we had this one-to-one meeting? No, how would you do that?
Aren't you glad that no one else is here?
There you go.
Yeah, okay.
Aren't you glad I didn't invite the rest of the company to this performance review meeting?
That's funny.
Yeah, I think that's great, Valerie. I mean, on a serious practical level, because I could imagine them taking it as a confrontational, unpleasant situation, and you just changed it around to where they could imagine it being much more uncomfortable and confrontational when everybody else is listening in.
Or
wow, this is actually a lot better. It's just you and me.
At least we're not in the HR office. I mean,
yeah, that's good. That's good. As soon as you sat down, that's the context reframe you need. At least this isn't the HR
let
reframe.
me put you at ease.
Yeah. Well, yeah. When somebody says, well, how long is this going to take? Not that long, because we could be in the HR office.
Longer if we're in the HR office.
We could have a long meeting right now, or we could have no meetings again ever. Like,
Yeah.
now how do you feel about the longer meeting?
To Stephen's point, you could take it the totally opposite way and try to make it as uncomfortable in your wording about the meeting and say it's one solitary encounter with the decision maker on your future.
I'm totally going to do that. You guys, I'm serious. I'm going
I like that.
But I think that's actually a good thing, because it could have the polarizing effect where it's actually humor and it'll make them be like, oh, this is so funny. This is going to be fun to go to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to love it.
Yeah.
I look forward to hearing about how that goes, Valerie.
So I got to do this. Yeah, I got to do this reframe.
So we went an hour over last time. We're right on time this
Excellent.
time. So
Woohoo. Okay. And just to remember, Sean, that next Sunday, we go an hour back. We
So
fall
next-
back an hour.
next Sunday, it's
Oh, you're on it.
7:30 for you right now.
Right. So next Sunday it would be 7:30. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right now.
Okay. So that makes sense. So I have to start an hour later here. Okay.
Our earlier.
So we start at 6:30.
You'll start at
Our
5.
6:30 next week will be 5:30.
Yes.
Let me write this down.
Yeah, draw a picture of it, Sean.
I'm gonna need to. I gotta feel it
So
out too.
what time is
Yeah.
it when for you when we start?
8:30.
8:30.
Yeah.
So you'll need to start at
That'll-
7:30.
Daylight savings needs to reframe.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes,
I agree.
definitely. I hate
Yeah,
this
so
one.
your 8:30 next Monday morning for you, it will be an hour earlier for us, so that will be 5:30 for us.
And 7:30 for him.
So it's 5:30, so it would need to be 7:30 for you, yeah.
No. Because if you guys
Cut you
go an
short,
hour
girl.
back, if you guys go, you fall back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Fall back. So if I'm still, say for instance, I'm just going 8:30. If I stay at 8:30, then next week you guys will be at 5:30 instead of 6:30.
Right.
So I have to go an hour forward.
You're right. You would have to go an hour forward.
9:30. You guys let me sleep in an hour.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
See, that's what happens when you draw pictures.
Yeah. The strategy works.
Yeah.
We're not starting earlier. And yet on the other side of the world, you're starting later.
Yeah.
That is so
Wrap your mind around that one.
Is that your
I wish
reframe?
it was earlier, honestly. I would love 7:30, but all right. I'll sleep in an hour. No, so yesterday, check this out. I stayed with a Balinese family, and they just finished a bunch of construction on the house. I have my own like separate apartment and everything, but they just finished construction on it, and they made like a little Hindu temple and stuff. It's super cool.
Oh, cool.
But they had to have a ceremony for it. And so day before yesterday, they shipped the whole family in from the village. There's literally like 20 Balinese kids, husbands, wives, just kind of running around the house, going kind of crazy. 10 p.m. at night, I'm ready to go to sleep, and they all want to gather outside my house and get the ceremony ready. Then, so everybody goes to sleep, everything is great and everything. There's a stray dog in the street just barking, blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh my gosh. So I'm throwing like bottles down at the dog to get it to shut up. Eventually I have to go chase it in the street. And it's still
after my own heart there.
Yeah. And it's still just barking.